Deep down, we all have something we want to change, right? Some habit we want to kick, some project we want to get consistent with, or maybe we're trying to help someone we care about, a kid, a friend, a coworker, make a positive shift. This drive to get better, to transform, is just part of being human. So let's really get into the science of what actually works, what truly sparks and sustains that change.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Why is this stuff so hard? I mean, we all basically know what we should be doing, but actually doing it, that can feel like trying to climb a mountain. Well, it turns out the way we usually try to make changes happen, it's not just kind of useless, it actually fights against the very wiring of our brains.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by totally busting the great motivation myth. Then we'll look at why trying to scare ourselves or others into changing just doesn't work. After that, we'll get to the good stuff, the 3 things that actually fuel action. We'll learn how to build a system that keeps going even when you're not motivated, how to master your own momentum, and we'll finish up with a super practical blueprint you can start using today. Okay, let's jump right in. First up, we need to talk about our default strategy, the one we all reach for instinctively, using warnings, threats, and a little bit of fear. You know that voice in your head when you're trying to quit something? It usually sounds a lot like this, doesn't it? A stern, scary warning. And it's not just us. This is the go-to strategy for everything from public health campaigns to parenting. We have this deep-seated belief that if we can just make people scared enough, they'll have no choice but to change. But here's where what feels logical just crashes headfirst into reality. The science is pretty clear. It doesn't really work. For example, all those graphic, frankly disgusting images they put on cigarette packs. Study after study shows they don't really stop people who are already smokers. In fact, one study found something totally wild. After seeing those images, smokers actually said quitting was less of a priority for them. How crazy is that? So that begs the question, right? Why? Why do we dig our heels in when people try to scare us straight? To figure that out, we've got to look at how our brains are built to react to fear. And spoiler alert, it's not by taking productive action. See, when something makes you feel stressed or cornered, your brain's first job isn't to solve the problem. Its first job is to make the bad feeling go away. And it has 3 main tricks for doing that. First up, rationalization. You know the drill. My grandpa smoked his whole life and lived to be 90. Second, what's called the boomerang effect. By brushing off the threat, we actually, weirdly, feel stronger. And third, the simplest trick of all, we just stick our heads in the sand and ignore it. A perfect example of this in action, the stock market. When do people obsessively check their investment apps? When the market's way up, of course, because seeing that green arrow feels good. But when the market tanks, suddenly nobody wants to log in. We are fundamentally wired to seek out good news and run away from bad news. And believe me, this isn't just a hunch. It's wired deep into our learning process. In my own lab, we found this incredible asymmetry. We'd give people information about their future, and when the news was good, the rosier view, they'd immediately update their beliefs. But when the news was bad, the bleaker view, they pretty much just ignored it. And this wasn't just young people. We saw the exact same pattern from age 10 all the way to 80. We're all built to welcome good news and slam the door on the bad. Okay, so this is it. If you take away only one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. The strategy we always use, the fear of loss. It just makes us freeze up, shut down, and avoid the problem. But the thrill of a potential gain, now that's what gets us moving. That's what drives action, engagement, and real pursuit. The whole game is about shifting from fear to gain, working with our brain's programming instead of fighting against it. All right, so if scaring ourselves doesn't work, what's the alternative? Well, that's what this next part is all about. We're going to uncover the 3 core psychological drivers that actually get the engine of change running. Let me tell you a story that just blows my mind. It's about hand washing in hospitals, the single most important thing to prevent infections. In one big hospital, they found that even with cameras watching them, only 1 out of every 10 staff members was actually washing their hands properly. All the warnings, all the rules, they had completely failed. So they tried something new, something super simple but absolutely brilliant. They put up an electronic scoreboard in the hallway. Every time a doctor or nurse used the hand sanitizer, a number on the board went up, showing the team's score for that shift. That's it. No warnings, no threats. And the results? You're not going to believe this. Compliance shot up from a pathetic 10% to nearly 90%, almost overnight. This was a massive success, so we have to ask, why did this simple scoreboard work when decades of fear-mongering did nothing? So what was the magic here? It came down to three key things, three powerful psychological fuels. First, social incentives. We are social animals. We're hardwired to care what other people are doing and how we measure up. Second, immediate rewards. Seeing that number tick up gave everyone a tiny positive hit of dopamine. It felt good. And third, progress monitoring. It made the impact of their actions visible, giving them a real sense of control. Okay, so those three things are fantastic for getting the fire started. But how do you keep it from burning out? To make change last, you have to go from a spark of motivation to a rock-solid system. And that's where discipline and habits come in. Now, when I say discipline, I don't mean something punishing. Let's look at the word itself. Motivation is emotional. It comes and goes. But discipline comes from the Latin word for teaching or learning. It's about committing to a practice, a system, whether you feel like it or not. Motivation without discipline is a recipe for frustration. In the foundation of any good system is the habit loop. It's how our brain automates things, and it has three parts: a cue or trigger, the routine, which is the action, and a reward, which tells your brain, hey, let's do that again. For so long, we've tried to change by focusing on the routine, just trying to muscle through it. But the real secret is to stop focusing on the routine and start designing the cue and the reward. So how do you engineer that cue? One of the most powerful tools is called an implementation intention. See, the problem isn't usually a lack of motivation, it's a lack of a clear plan. We say things like, I should work out more. Instead, you create a specific rule. When my first meeting of the day ends, I will immediately put on my running shoes in my office. It takes the decision-making out of the moment and makes the action almost automatic. Okay, so we've got the spark and the system. Now let's go a little deeper. Let's talk about mastering your momentum by shifting from what you do to who you are. You know, those little rewards are great to get you going, but for something to really stick, the motivation has to come from within. There's a theory called self-determination theory that says this deep, intrinsic motivation kicks in when three basic human needs are met: the need for competence, to feel like you're getting better at something; the need for relatedness, to feel connected to others; and the big one, autonomy, the need to feel like you are in the driver's seat, making your own choices. And this brings us to a tiny language tweak that has a massive impact. Think about the difference between these two phrases. I can't eat that cake. Hear that? It's a struggle. You're resisting. You're fighting yourself. It takes willpower. But what about I don't eat cake? That's not a struggle. It's a statement. It's just a fact about you. The decision is already made. It's part of your identity, and it requires zero willpower. All right, we've covered a ton of ground. Let's bring it all together into a practical, no excuses blueprint you can start using literally today to put all of this into practice. The absolute number one rule here is to make the first step so easy you can't possibly say no. We're talking 2 minutes or less. So if your big goal is to write a chapter, your tiny habit is just to write the first headline. Your reward? That great feeling of seeing the word count go from 0 to something. You want to exercise every day? Your tiny habit is just to put on your running shoes. The reward is that you've successfully started. It's all about building that initial momentum. Look, nobody's perfect. You're going to slip up. That's just part of the process. The trick is not letting one slip up derail you completely. So here's the rule. Never miss twice. Missing once is an accident. Life happens. But missing a second time in a row? That's the beginning of a new, negative habit. The goal isn't perfection. It's to never let one mistake turn into two. And so we're back where we started, but with a whole new perspective. We know that relying on fear, on the negative, just leaves us stuck and stressed out. And we know that the real power, the real catalyst for change, comes from focusing on the positive, from social connection, immediate rewards, and progress. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Will you let the fear of what you might lose define your choices? Or are you ready to be propelled by the thrill of what you stand to gain?